We had been married for 19 years and together for 23 when she started pulling away and became distant. Eventually, she announced that our marriage was probably over and that she was on a healing journey through Alcoholics Anonymous. While she labeled me as broken due to my focus on work, family, music, woodworking, friends, and sports, she began spending more and more time away from home to celebrate a friend's sobriety, leaving our teenage daughter and me alone many nights. As time went on, things deteriorated further. My wife said she wouldn't file for divorce until our daughter went to college, interspersed with occasional moments of regret where she'd question, "What am I doing? We've built such a great life together." After enduring this for about 5 months, I couldn't handle it any longer and decided to check her emails, searching for the term love. What I found was a bombshell. When I confronted her, she asked what I had discovered, which was my first mistake. I told her. She came up with a new set of lies that conveniently minimized the impact of my findings. "We only made out once. It was terrible. We're just friends," she said. I was devastated, especially since I had been through this before with my first wife. I demanded she cut off all contact with this guy, and we spent the weekend trying to reconnect, or so I hoped. For a short while, it seemed like we were on the road to recovery, but within a couple of weeks, she began reverting to the hostility she had previously directed at me. She started pushing me to work on my chest muscles. I explained that I cycled 20 miles daily and was in excellent shape, and I felt good about my body. I later learned her lover had a much more impressive chest, more nights out for celebrations. I took a phone she had recently upgraded from and did a thorough forensic search. I uncovered explicit text messages detailing their full-blown affair. Her lover turned out to be a short, pockmarked opiate addict from AA, standing at 58 inches compared to my 62, bankrupt, estranged from his family, and poorly educated. Meanwhile, I had graduated from a top university and was a successful technology executive. At least I took some comfort in knowing it wasn't about me. I confronted her again. She wanted to know what new information I had found. I told her, "No, you'll just come up with more lies. Either tell me everything or get the hell out of my house. Remember, I already know more than you can imagine." The truth came pouring out in a flood of sordid details, revealing every basic sex act she had engaged in. I insisted she write it all down in detail. I also confronted her junkie boyfriend at the second-rate hotel where he worked. I blew the situation wide open. The hotel chain ended up transferring him after I exposed him in the lobby. I told her I would think about reconciliation, but she had an enormous amount of work to do to regain my shattered trust. She seemed thankful for the chance. My second mistake was not insisting she move out for a while. What I didn't know was that our teenage daughter had been reading her mother's emails and was aware of all the grim details. A few weeks after the big revelation, our daughter got drunk, took some pills, and drove off the road, narrowly avoiding injury as the car flipped and nearly fell into a rain-swollen creek. She received a severe DUI, was expelled from the National Honor Society, and faced public shame at school. Mom decided I had to handle all of this because she couldn't. A couple of weeks later, my ex had a complete breakdown as a parent. She erupted in a furious outburst at our daughter, shouting, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You're the reason I want to get completely hammered. You're the reason I want to put a fucking bullet in my head." She then sped out of the driveway, leaving my daughter and me stunned, with no idea what might happen next or where she might be heading. Understandably, our daughter was devastated. I did my best to comfort her, trying to explain that her mother's explosive behavior was entirely unacceptable and stemmed from her own cognitive and emotional chaos, not from any failing on our daughter's part. Mom eventually returned, visibly remorseful, but still downplaying the severity of her actions. What followed was a strange transformation. Our daughter, initially consumed with anger towards her mother, began to fear that expressing that anger could push her mother towards suicide. In her mind, this would somehow make her responsible for it, according to the warped logic Mom had laid out. Consequently, our daughter redirected her understandable frustration towards me. Mom, finding relief in the shift of blame, encouraged our daughter to view me as the villain and direct all her anger at me. As an alcoholic, Mom was keen to shield her fragile ego, even if it meant manipulating and emotionally abusing her own child to achieve that. The situation only got worse from there. My wife started to see herself as the true victim in this mess, and in a perverse twist she might have been. She declared with an unsettling sense of relief that I've forgiven myself. She began to stalk me on internet support groups for people dealing with infidelity, a third mistake, revealing my sources of support, using what she found to fuel new, bitter arguments. As you might expect by now, things completely fell apart when, a year into our shaky reconciliation, she launched into a mocking, vicious attack on my deepest insecurities, those private fears and sadnesses that every long-term partner knows to respect. She ruthlessly imitated me, reenacting moments from years past when I had shared my most vulnerable feelings. She put on a show of fake tears and exaggerated self-pity while laughing maniacally at my visible discomfort and pain. However, this was actually a significant turning point for me. If, during a period when I was trying to offer a chance for rebuilding trust, she was willing to completely obliterate all norms of marital decency and exploit my deepest vulnerabilities, it was clear that she could never be trusted again. At that moment, I knew I had to cut this toxic presence out of my life. My previous uncertainty was replaced by a firm and clear resolve. I could never trust her again, and I wasn't willing to stay in a relationship with someone who was irredeemably untrustworthy. What had once been ambivalence turned into calm certainty. The divorce settlement was brutal and contentious. I ended up paying her $200,000 to keep the house I had already paid for and to retain my pension that I had worked 20 years to build. Despite her own income, I had shouldered all the household expenses, mortgage, car payments, taxes, insurance, food, and more throughout our entire marriage. I still don't know where her money went over the years, but it was probably funneled to her junkie boyfriend. The one small victory in this whole mess was that the house appraiser she and her attorney insisted on undervalued the property by several $100,000. This saved me from financial ruin and allowed me to keep my dream home. A custom-built, high-end house perched on a ridge with 3 wooded acres, overlooking a pristine, preserved river. It's not a massive home, but it includes a detached recording studio for my music and a woodworking shop, making it the calmest and most peaceful place I've ever known. 4 years later, life is significantly better for my daughter and me. Our relationship has healed and grown stronger, although the scars from the past are still deeply felt. She got accepted into a highly competitive college in NYC and is about to graduate. She frequently tells me how much she appreciates that I've never spoken badly about her mother in her presence, while also sharing how stressful it is when her mother publicly curses me and disparages me to anyone who will listen. Now my ex refers to her affair as my cry for help, placing the blame on me for not understanding it as such. She tells her remaining friends, "I just slept with this guy a few times, and he was too selfish to try to understand my pain." In her narrative, it's all about the sex, and she'll never grasp how trivial that is compared to the total destruction of trust. Hearing these comments through the grapevine only reinforces my sense of relief. Now, I'm in a much better place with an amazing girlfriend who is emotionally mature and supportive. My daughter likes her too, and for the first time in a long while, things feel stable and promising. I won't pretend I'm without scars. Those wounds run deep and are still quite raw. But despite that, I'm genuinely enjoying life and where I am now. It took a lot of time to transition from a heart broken by anger to a place of apathy towards my ex. After nearly 25 years together, building a life and a dream home, and supporting each other through medical crises, job struggles, and her battle with alcoholism, it was tough to let go. She had been there for me when I lost my father suddenly, and we had built a substantial life together. Her family was important to me, and I had a deep affection for them. Once her affair made it clear she wasn't willing to put in the effort to rebuild my trust, I had to pull the plug. The separation was messy and painful for a few months. My lawyer advised against moving out, so I ended up relocating to the loft of my barely heated outbuilding. It didn't have plumbing, but it was private and peaceful. We spent the next couple of months negotiating the separation agreement, which would also serve as the divorce settlement. Since our daughter was almost 18, custody wasn't a concern. My ex was determined to extract as much as she could from me, but thankfully, she and her lawyer insisted on an appraiser for the house who significantly undervalued it. I ended up paying $200,000 to remortgage the house and retain my pension. By the summer of 2016, 6 months after the split, I moved back into the house and began dating again. It was probably too soon, but my wounded ego craved some validation after being told for 2 years how awful and undesirable I was. The person who truly resonated with me was someone I'd known casually through mutual friends. She had been divorced from her philandering ex-husband. Ironically, a friend of my ex. We hit it off almost immediately and became exclusive within just a few dates. She's Ivy League smart, beautiful, a musician, and incredibly compassionate. But what stands out the most is her emotional maturity. We've been together for nearly 4 years now, and we've never had a serious fight. We have disagreements, of course, but we handle them with grace. She's in the process of moving in with me, and I'm upgrading the house and making it welcoming for our new life together. We're both looking towards retirement in a few years. I trust her completely and am excited about growing old with her. She's nothing like the chaotic patterns I had been stuck in. Instead, she's the quiet, kind, valedictorian type, not overtly competitive except in Scrabble. She's thoughtful, and my children, siblings, and even my 94-year-old mother all hold her in high regard. My ex, on the other hand, is still angry and fragile. She continues to badmouth me to anyone who will listen, including our now adult daughter. I've reached a point where her venom doesn't affect me anymore, though it still concerns me on behalf of my daughter. Instead, I see my ex's rage and misplaced victimhood as a sign that I made the right choice. The sense of relief I feel is overwhelming. At the same time, I genuinely wish my ex healing and recovery. While I've had moments of schadenfreude at her expense, that feeling is fading. I hope she can get her life together, not just for our daughter's sake, but because I believe there's a good person buried beneath her troubled exterior. Ideally, we'd find a way to get along, though I'm perfectly fine with her choosing to have no contact with me if that's what she prefers. 5 years down the line, I'm in a great place. My children are thriving, and my adorable grandchildren live next door. I'm settled in a beautiful home and have a deeply supportive partner who encourages me to be my best while loving me for who I am, flaws and all. I still have some PTSD from the whole ordeal, but if I could have seen this future 5 years ago, it would have been incredibly inspiring. It does get better, I promise. Life after infidelity can be a tough road, but I want to offer a hopeful story for those who might need a bit of encouragement. Both of my marriages ended in spousal infidelity, with children caught in the middle. It was devastating each time, once after 7 years together, and again after 25 years. I was left doubting whether I could ever trust again. Through extensive therapy, I came to realize that my picker was broken. I had a pattern of choosing partners who were beautiful and intelligent, but ultimately narcissistic, much like my father was. After a lot of self-reflection, I decided to re-enter the dating scene, albeit prematurely. At my age, in my 60s, I wanted to experience a healthy relationship while I still had the chance. Using online dating, I reconnected with an old acquaintance. To my delight, she turned out to be genuinely wonderful. She's not only beautiful and Ivy League educated, but also a fellow musician with a kind and progressive spirit. Unlike my past partners, she's the antithesis of a narcissist. She's compassionate, empathetic, and incredibly loyal. Over the past 4 years, we've been together without any major arguments. We do have disagreements, but no topic is off limits. She has a remarkable ability to address sensitive issues calmly and work through them together. She moved in with me at the start of the COVID pandemic, and despite the overall stress of quarantine, it has only strengthened our bond. We've decided to get married. We've shared the news with our children and are now preparing to inform our aging parents and siblings. Our kids are all grown and thriving. One's a therapist, another's a doctor, a third is a veterinarian, and the fourth works in fashion. They've all managed to navigate the aftermath of our previous turmoil and are doing well. So if you're struggling with the aftermath of infidelity, remember that it's possible to find happiness and build a fulfilling relationship again. There's hope, and life can indeed get better. 6 years ago last night, I found myself confronting her again. She had already admitted to some inappropriate making out with a guy, based on incriminating emails I had discovered. This confrontation was more intense, as I had uncovered ongoing text conversations between her and this guy, even after she'd shown remorse. I had managed to access her phone and found a trove of disgusting, incriminating evidence about her affair with a junkie she met in AA. 6 years ago last night, our daughter was spending the evening at a friend's house. I told my now ex, "We need to talk." She looked alarmed. "About what?" she asked. "I need to understand everything that happened between you and," I said. I recited various statements she had made in her initial half-hearted confession, some of which I knew were lies, others I suspected were true. "Yes, that's all true," she admitted, growing increasingly uneasy. Then I said, "I know you're lying. Tell me the whole truth, or get the hell out of my house and don't come back." My anger was palpable. She shot back, "What do you think isn't true?" I replied, "I'm not falling for that trick again. If I tell you what I know, you'll just come up with a new set of lies to cover it. Either tell me everything or I'm kicking you out." She broke down and confessed most of it. Multiple encounters, oral sex, intercourse, various positions, all supposedly happening during evenings she claimed were dedicated to celebrating an AA buddy's sobriety. My emotions hit an all-time low. Fury, sadness, heartbreak, a full spectrum of negative feelings crashing together. A couple of days later, I went to the hotel where her lover worked and confronted him loudly in the lobby. "So this is your game? Seducing mentally unstable married women you meet in AA?" He was promptly transferred to another state and began making veiled threats against our family. We attempted reconciliation. Initially, she was cooperative, but over time, she regressed into the same narcissistic behaviors that had driven her to alcohol in the first place. She snooped on me through internet support forums, seeking reasons to start fights. She even threatened suicide in front of our daughter, blaming her for her actions. Consequently, our daughter redirected all her anger towards me, the safer target. Then, on the one-year anniversary of D-Day 5 years ago yesterday, she launched into a cruel tirade, mocking my deepest vulnerabilities, insecurities about my children and family, and took perverse pleasure in causing me pain. That was my definitive enough is enough moment. I knew back then that time would heal, though not entirely. I was confident that 5 years out, things would be significantly better, and I was right. My relationship with my daughter has largely healed. I paid my ex $200,000 to leave, which allowed me to keep the dream house and my pension. I'm now engaged to a beautiful, Ivy League-educated woman who is emotionally mature. She has a daughter who is a therapist. My own daughter has become a COVID doctor, while my son is a veterinarian, and my youngest daughter works in fashion management in NYC. I also have 3 grandsons who live less than 20 miles away. My fiancé and I are planning to retire in a couple of years. Despite the challenges of COVID and the usual work stress, life is great and low on drama. She's incredibly loyal and comfortable with herself. I don't regret giving my ex a second chance. It helped clear any lingering doubts about whether we could have made it work. Naturally, she blames me for her cheating, but that's typical behavior for alcoholics. So, to those who are struggling right now, remember that it does get better, much better. Hang in there, seek help if you need it, and trust that things will improve significantly. I get that everyone thinks their ex is a bit off, and I'm even working on a song called "Everybody's Ex is Crazy," because, well, it's true. So my ex from 5 years ago, and I recently had a disagreement over some items from our long-settled divorce agreement. She wanted a 3.5-day grace period to pick up a piece of art, but I insisted it should be contingent on her keeping me informed about medical expenses and the use of the college fund, as stipulated in the agreement. Things quickly took a nasty turn. She started hurling insults and trash talking. I just ignored it. No sense in engaging with that kind of negativity. A few days later, my fiancé brought in the mail and found an envelope from my ex. Naturally, I was suspicious. My fiancé opened it, and inside were 3 old photographs from my ex's 40th birthday party, taken 2 decades ago. The photos feature me and my fiancé at the celebration table. At the time, my fiancé was married to a friend of my ex, and I was married to my now ex. Back then, my fiancé and I were just acquaintances. There was no hint of romance or interest between us. We were both fully committed to our spouses. The photos are hardly scandalous. In one, we're sipping drinks. In another, I'm looking away, and my fiancé might be looking in the same direction. Or at me. Hard to tell. In the third, we're mostly hidden by a table decoration. There was no note included with the photos. It seems like my ex has convinced herself that these are evidence of a long-standing affair between us, despite the fact that we didn't even start dating until 6 months after our split, which was a year after our failed reconciliation, which itself was a year after her affair began, and a full 16 years after these photos were taken. My ex appears to be projecting her own infidelity onto me and my fiancé. We've had a good laugh over this absurdity, although I worry that she might be feeding this delusion to our daughter. It's a pity, really, My ex must be so consumed by narcissism and self-loathing that she's fabricating a narrative of victimhood and blaming me for the cheating she committed. My approach to this latest drama? No response. For those newly betrayed, it's important to understand that forgiveness isn't the ultimate goal. Your partner who has betrayed you might push for it, and you may eventually find it within yourself to forgive them. However, forgiveness alone isn't enough, nor is it the end game. I've forgiven my ex for her infidelity. She was caught up in a narcissistic fog that seems to be her constant state now, probably tied to perimenopause. While I don't condone what she did, I understand she was a mess, and that it hurt her more than it hurt me or our daughter. However, I don't forgive how she treated our daughter. That's a separate issue. The real goal, whether you decide to stay together or part ways, is to regain your ability to trust. If you choose to stay and work things out, though success rates are quite low, it will only succeed if the unfaithful partner genuinely puts in the effort to rebuild trust. On the other hand, if you decide to end the relationship, which is often the outcome, even after trying to reconcile, the focus should shift to finding a way to trust someone else again, including yourself. Trust is the true casualty of betrayal, and rebuilding it is the ultimate goal of healing. My letter to STBX. I wrote this letter 5 years ago, and while my anger has softened somewhat, I still stand by everything I wrote. I never sent it, but putting my thoughts on paper was incredibly cathartic. Sorry it's long. With the judge's signature on our divorce decree, we're no longer legally married. However, we're still connected through our shared history and the responsibilities of parenting. The end of our relationship was marred by its sordid details, overshadowing the more positive moments of our past. I still cherish the early years and grieve for the kind person I once knew. Reflecting on our marriage and its unfortunate end has been an ongoing process. After spending over half my adult life with you, untangling myself has been both challenging and messy, especially considering how things concluded. The separation has pushed me into deep self-reflection. Therapy and introspection have helped me gain a clearer understanding of myself and my background. I hope these insights will provide me with better tools for my current and future relationships. Seeing the person you've become over the past few years has only reinforced that maintaining a healthy relationship with you is no longer feasible. Despite the progress I've made, anger still lingers. I invested a lot into our relationship, striving to create a supportive family environment and giving you the space you needed. I honored your feelings and tried to make your life better. As a codependent, I often suppressed my own needs, leading to unhealthy resentments. Although you showed kindness and appreciation early on, your struggles eventually led you to become resentful, deceitful, and driven by your alcoholic ego. I hope you never experience the kind of pain I felt when someone you've dedicated yourself to tries to alleviate their own insecurities by tearing you down. During my career crisis, when I needed your support, you withdrew, claiming not to understand what comfort meant. Despite my clear explanations of what I needed, you pushed me away and focused on feeding your insecurities, which led to the destruction of our family. Whether there was a direct cause and effect is something I can't definitively answer. The family you once cherished was cast aside for you to indulge in your self-doubts in harmful ways. You fell into the trap of seeking validation from another man, prioritizing his attention over your husband, your daughter, and your family. You professed compassion and personal growth, yet your actions revealed a callous disregard for these values, morphing into a self-delusional mess of hypocrisy. Our daughter and I granted you space to heal through AA. You exploited that generosity to further deceive us. Your increased attendance at AA meetings and celebrations, and time spent away from the family, were mere ploys to seek validation from a fellow broken soul. You spun a narrative of my supposed brokenness to contrast with your purported growth, using your journey of self-discovery as a cover for the destruction you wrought. Your hypocrisy was a cruel charade, used to elevate yourself while obscuring the harm you caused. You lashed out at me and abandoned your family to cope with your self-loathing. And for what? When faced with your betrayal, you resorted to new lies, further entrenching the betrayal and jeopardizing any chance of redemption. It was only through my forensic work and an explicit threat of divorce that you revealed part of the truth, even though it was still laced with deceit about the extent of your relationship with your lover. You continued to evade full accountability, maintaining your pattern of half-truths and excuses. Despite all the pain you caused, I offered you the gift of a second chance. I was prepared to undertake the monumental task of moving past our ordeal, provided you were willing to be honest, genuinely remorseful, and make a complete turnaround from the narcissism and destructiveness that had overtaken you for over a year. Despite everything you had done to me, my family, and my dreams, I was willing to give you another opportunity. Initially, you showed signs of remorse and made some efforts to amend your behavior. However, over time, those initial gestures of remorse faded, replaced by your old selfish patterns. You began stalking me on support forums to gather information to use against me in arguments. You vilified my anger while continuing to unleash yours unchecked. Instead of supporting my emotional healing, you focused on making excuses for your behavior, downplaying your role, and insisting you would not be shamed. You criticized me for sharing my pain with others who could offer support, viewing it as a betrayal rather than a necessity for my own healing. Your need for self-deception and denial of your actions outweighed my need for genuine support. The breaking point for me was your malicious tirade on the anniversary of D-Day, where you mocked my deepest vulnerabilities, demonstrating in the clearest terms who you had become. My decision to divorce you wasn't solely about the infidelity or my struggle to forgive you for the harm you inflicted on our family. It was because you repeatedly proved yourself to be irredeemably untrustworthy. I realized that our reconciliation stood no chance against the relentless demands of your narcissism. Without the possibility of regaining trust, our relationship was one I could no longer endure. Although you might believe my sensitivity to infidelity was the cause of our separation, it was not just the infidelity. It was the manifestation of a broader pattern of untrustworthiness. This pattern continued during our in-house separation, when you moved back into the house under the pretense of supporting our daughter. You disregarded our separation agreement, aggressively pursuing every asset you could, including inheritance from my mother and stock options from before our marriage, everything you could legally, though not morally, claim. You relentlessly criticized how I was managing the aftermath of your destructive actions, blaming me for not handling the fallout better, while shifting much of the blame for the destruction you caused onto me to avoid accountability. Since our separation, you have vilified me as a narcissist, accused me of being self-centered, and expressed relief that we're done. You have accused me of being an inadequate provider, not only for our daughter but for my other children, blaming me once more for my perceived brokenness. You've spun a narrative of your own absolution, shared it with friends, and sold it to our daughter, only to deny it afterward. And in between these episodes of anger and blame, you've offered olive branches. I understand now that you cannot fully confront the enormity of what you've done. I recognize that facing the reality of your actions and the destruction of the family you once claimed was your priority would be overwhelming. I understand the profound nature of the self-loathing and narcissism that drive your delusions and how devastating it must be to take full accountability for your actions. I am working hard to put your betrayal behind me, slowly and with considerable effort. The emotional wounds are healing, albeit gradually. I'm managing the financial strain and coming to terms with the shattered dreams of a healthy family. My focus is now on moving forward and cultivating relationships that are honest and fully informed. While I regret some of the ways I handled the devastation, I'm learning to forgive myself, considering the extent to which my aspirations for family, love, and trust were dismantled by your self-destructive actions. But my personal pain and shattered dreams are not the greatest tragedy of your actions. What truly haunts me is the impact on our daughter, my daughter. Your behavior has severely compromised her sense of safety and stability. You transformed our home from a sanctuary into a battleground, leaving her with scars that overshadow her memories of security and comfort. She can no longer stay in her childhood home. Your actions have caused significant financial turmoil. You were supposed to contribute to our daughter's college fund with a target of $110,000, while I managed the household expenses. Yet, there is a shortfall of $55,000. What happened to that money? Did you give it to your struggling lover? Did you spend it on hidden aspects of your life? Whatever the reason, it's missing, and now we are living under severe financial constraints. Despite paying $10,000 in legal fees, over $8,000 for cancer-related expenses, covering car repairs you caused, and spending over $1,000 on veterinary bills for pets you insisted on having, I've still managed to save money for our daughter's college fund. After giving you $60,000 in June, you've saved only $8,000. You criticize me for prioritizing her education over discretionary spending while failing to save adequately for her college costs. What message are you sending her? Your financial mismanagement extends to decisions affecting her well-being. You've persuaded her not to get an on-campus job, causing her stress and feeding into a fantasy that the family can still afford a private college experience with spending money, despite the financial chaos you've caused. My focus on essential expenses and expecting her to earn her own spending money has been met with your anger and name-calling, which she overhears, while your savings for her foundational costs lag behind. Our daughter's near-fatal car accident was no mere coincidence. Your destructive behavior severely threatened her sense of security, leading to increased substance abuse and the accident. Although we agreed on certain constraints following her accident, you began to undermine those limits, often in her presence, which eroded the unified front we had agreed upon. You've since rewritten the events to absolve yourself, presenting a false narrative to shield yourself from responsibility. The facts, as recorded in my journal, contradict your self-serving delusions. Her accident occurred shortly after she discovered your betrayal, exacerbating her trauma. The most shocking example of your destructive behavior came weeks after her accident when you screamed at her, "Fuck you! You're the reason I want to get drunk! You're the reason I want to put a bullet in my fucking head!" You later claimed you and she had moved past this, but I am certain those words left deep emotional scars. By expressing such extreme vulnerability, you made it clear that any criticism of you could be harmful, robbing her of the opportunity to express her valid anger. Your behavior has also led to a troubling dynamic in which our daughter, aware of my stability, channels her anger toward me as the safer parent. You seem to find relief in her anger at me, using it to avoid accountability for the destruction you've wrought. While it's painful for me to bear her anger, I find solace in the fact that she sees me as a reliable presence. I've attempted to discuss these issues with you, but you respond with attacks and accusations about how I manage my emotions. You criticize my anger, even as you fail to recognize the irony of your own behavior. Do I have faults to address with her? Certainly. I've apologized for my outbursts and will continue to work on improving my responses. However, you've reinforced a narrative that paints my reactions as threatening, even in instances where they were not. She told me over Thanksgiving that she is furious with me and that she will never forgive me for things she believes I almost did. She is struggling with the pain you caused, and when I highlight this, you rush to defend her, accusing me of being a narcissist. The irony is striking, yet you remain blind to it.